Good afternoon. I'm Brooks Rayford, president of NC Tech. Welcome to our Q2 session of our Government Vendor Network. It's been a long-running offering of the association, and we'll have two more of these later in the year, which I'll get to in a moment as to who will be with us. Quick note that we're recording this session, so we'll send a follow-up email to all registrants, whether you're here in the room or virtual, that has a link to the video of the session, plus the materials that you'll see and be referencing, so you won't have to take pictures of slides unless you're just really anxious to have them. As most of you know, we are very fortunate at the association to have had for many years, I'm 16 years in, and it predates me, the services and support of the Brooks Pierce Law Firm, in whose offices we sit, as our legislative counsel, our policy counsel, led by Ed Turlington over here, and Drew Moretz, his colleague. Ed and Drew will provide, as they usually do, a brief legislative update. The fireworks begin tomorrow, I suppose, right? Legislative update for us at the conclusion of this meeting, once we've gone through the presentation from our guest speakers and the Q&A with them. As we look ahead, I want to call your attention to several activities. We have a lot going on that I hope you and your companies and organizations will participate in. On Thursday of this week, the next in our series of Brews and Bites, we'll play on words there, networking event will take place here in the Triangle at Tobacco Wood Brewing. I think we have almost 200 people registered, Alex, is that right? These are free. We just asked that you register in advance to come. These are held in regions across North Carolina. So we just had one last week in the Triad. We have ones coming up in Wilmington, Charlotte, in Asheville, and we'll kind of repeat the cycle in the fall, so keep an eye out on our calendar for those. Then on May the 8th, we will host our annual Capitol Hill reception in Washington. We invite North Carolina's congressional delegation and their senior staff members to join us at a bar. They're always happy to come near Capitol Hill. And we also have you may not know, most governors have a DC office, and so North Carolina's director and deputy director of the governor's DC office will be with us as well. And individuals who are members or employees of member companies of NC Tech can register themselves or can sign on their company to be one of the co-host sponsors, which comes with some tickets. So please share that internally. Everything I'm telling you will be in the follow-up email with links, so you'll have it available to you. And then many companies have people in DC who might not be active with NC Tech because they're physically there and mostly focused on federal policy. So we depend on our members to share with their offices in DC if you have such a thing, and welcome them to register. On May the 15th, we are one of a handful of organizations in the area and in the state supporting an event being organized by Steve Rao, who's right here. He serves on the Morrisville Town Council. It'll be a hybrid session, so an in-person event with virtual beaming in of our keynote speaker and also participants who need to do so virtually, featuring a fireside chat with former Cisco CEO John Chambers. The discussion will focus heavily on the impact of AI, and participation, as I say, can be in person or virtual. We'll include the registration link for that, free to attend, in the follow-up email as well. Later next month, our annual statewide tech conference, which is called State of Technology, will take place on May 23rd here in the Triangle with a welcome reception the evening before. We've just announced last 24 to 48 hours the lineup of speakers and panelists, so check your email for that and let us know if there are segments that your organization might be interested in participating in as a moderator, sponsor, what have you. And the last thing, calendar-wise, to call to your attention is that we also host quarterly virtual gatherings of CIOs and CISOs. These are peer-led discussions where one of the participating CIOs or CISOs will kick off the conversation and sort of moderate that discussion. It's for an hour early in the morning, easy to participate in. And each session has it's an invitation-only participation model, but each session has a couple of sponsor slots available who can bring representatives as well. The CIO session for this quarter is on the morning of May the 7th, and the CISO session is on the morning of May the 14th. So lots going on. As I say, I'll recap all of this in the follow-on email from today. All right, so with today's hybrid format, when we get to Q&A, those who are watching online can submit questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Don't use the chat button unless you have technical issues you want help with, but Q&A if you want to submit a question, and Alex will try his best to convey those to me. And we'll monitor those, try to work them in as we have time. So to get us started, I'd like to welcome Jen Greenwich, not pronounced Greenwich. Jen, come on up, with Palo Alto Networks to say a few words of greeting and to introduce our featured guests. Thank you.
I had to print out as well because I can't see, so I apologize. Thank you, Brooks. Appreciate it. Palo Alto Networks is pleased to sponsor today's session of the NC Tech Government Vendor Network. My name again is Jen Greenwich, and I support the state agencies for both North and South Carolina in conjunction with two of my colleagues here, Brent Floyd, our systems engineer, and Allison Helms, who covers local county government. So as the world's leading cybersecurity company, our technologies give over 80,000 enterprise companies and organizations the power to protect billions worldwide. Whether you need to secure your network, cloud, or hybrid workforces, or modernize your SOC, Palo Alto Networks brings forth a simple, comprehensible, scalable platform approach that drives automation and reduces complexity. As the threat landscape continues to intensify and nation-state actors continue to pose insurmountable damage, Palo Alto Networks is at the forefront working in conjunction with our government agencies and partners to protect the citizens. And with that, today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Tori Jessup, who until last week was COO, but is now Chief Deputy Secretary and Deputy State CIO, congratulations, at the North Carolina Department of Information Technology, as well as James Tanzosh, got it? Okay, good. Chief IT Procurement Officer at NCDIT. The NCDIT is a member of the NC Tech, and we have a long history of collaborating on procurement process improvement. So please join me in welcoming James and Tori.
So good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Right. So James and I, we're not going to tag team like we did last year. We're like right beside each other. He's going to come up after me. But again, I'm Tori Jessup, the new Chief Deputy State CIO, also wearing the hat of COO right now. Last time I came here, I was the Chief Operating Officer in the procurement team, or statewide IT procurement office, reported up to me, or still reports up to me for at least for a little while longer. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. I always want to say thank you to Brooks and the team in the NC Tech Association, and for our host here today, Brooks Pierce, and the team here. Ed, known Ed for a long time, since I was a little guy. I mean, since I was younger, still a little guy, but before I was shaving, before I had gray, before I started coloring my gray, but no, it's indeed a pleasure to be here. Want to come here again and talk about procurement. I think this is my third opportunity to talk about procurement here at this event. So always a pleasure to do so. So next slide. And then I think the next slide after that too. So the last few times we've talked to you, I think the first time we came to talk to you, we were just getting started with a streamlined process, I think many of you whose faces are familiar to me in here, and it's good to see some people in person as opposed to on a Teams call. But, we were going through a streamlined IT procurement process 2 years ago, the first time I came here. Last year we were talking about how we had just adopted a sourcing tool, the Ariba system is what we use, and that's also what the Department of Administration uses. And and we also talked about some dashboarding that we're about to start doing, and we've done all of that, right? And so as Secretary Weaver, who's here with us, by the way, my boss, as he says that, we make data-driven decisions. And so we're at that place now from our IT procurement standpoint where we can start to make IT data-driven decisions for procurement. And so what we're starting to see, or what we're seeing now that we're over a year into using our sourcing tool, is that we're starting to make progress in the right direction. I mean, many of you are interested in us getting done in the IT procurement process faster. And we see that we're doing that a lot faster. Our amendments are 19% faster, invitation for bid, 16% faster, RFPs, 52% faster, and we're going to get faster than 205 days. RFQs and statements of work. James will talk about our state term contracts here in just a few minutes, but those statements of work are happening 40% faster. So, there's a lot of interest in statements of work and state term contracts. Next slide. And we talked about our 10-step process. Well, it hadn't changed. It is still a 10-step process. We're convinced that each step of this process, with the exception of phase 2, is absolutely necessary according to the statute. Phase 2 is an opportunity for agencies to sit down with us and talk about what their real business need is and some of the challenges or needs that we might see in the procurement process. But we, DIT, we own steps 1, 4, and 7. The first phase is where our enterprise project management office reviews the business need to determine whether it's an IT project or not. And of course, if it's an IT project, then it's assigned a project manager to make sure that that those projects are on time and within budget, that all things that need to get done are getting done. And then steps 4 and 7, I can't state how critical those steps are, but that's where our security reviews take place, our legal reviews take place there, privacy, architecture, and so forth. Those reviews take place in steps 4 and 7. And then in step 8, and James will talk a little bit more about what we're seeing in step 8. But step 8 is where we need the vendor community's help, really, because that's the negotiation point. And, again, thanks to the NC Tech Association, because there have been times where you've connected us with vendors because either they have questions or, we need to understand better from the community, some of the things that we could do better. And we've listened to that. And so, what we've tried to do is do a better job educating the vendor community on phase 8, where the negotiation takes place, because there are some, I guess, terms and conditions that are really a matter of law. And sometimes there's an attempt to negotiate those terms and conditions, and it can delay the process. But the reality is that because they're a matter of law, we can't negotiate those terms and conditions. And so we would love to continue to have conversations with the vendor community and understanding some of the concerns that you have with maybe some of the terms and conditions. If there's some things that we need to look at from a statutory or policy standpoint that need to be revised as innovation takes place, then we'd love to understand that. Next step, next slide. And as I said, I mean, that review process is just critical. I mean, we see the contracting process as a significant part of our cybersecurity posture in the state of North Carolina. Like I said, we have our enterprise architecture reviews to make sure that things fit into our ecosystem, and cybersecurity to make sure that they're safe when they're in our ecosystem. And then, of course, making sure that we're following the law and complying with whether it's privacy or legal requirements. Next slide. So now that we have all of this visibility and this data, let's just point to this slide because it just shows that we're making progress. And some of you were at the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee meeting last week. You saw this slide. And what it shows here is that when we piloted our sourcing tool in the 3rd and 4th quarter of calendar year 2022, that we weren't doing so well, especially compared to what we're doing today. Our internal reviews, meaning those security and architecture and legal reviews, were taken on average of 30 to 40 days at that time. So data drives behavior. I remember when I first got my 2007 Camry Hybrid had a dashboard up there and it told me how much gas I was saving. And so what would I do? I'd slow down. I try to beat my average gas miles per gallon. And so it made me act differently. I was a safer driver as a result of it, and I got better gas mileage. And so, we've got the dashboard now. And so we're doing things differently too, to make sure that we're getting procurements through the door. So data does drive behavior. It drives our decisions, as Secretary Weaver says it should. And now when we launched, we cut it in half. We cut the average time for those reviews in half. Because our team could see themselves and how productive they were. And now we're like 9 days on average in this current year, at least the first quarter of this year, and we hope to get better. Next slide. And as we're getting better and as it's taking less time to do those internal reviews, we also see that we're getting more procurements that are coming through. More IT procurements. This is a trend, and we don't see that this trend is going to slow down. I mean, there are various reasons for this, but a lot of things are connected now. Agencies are starting to modernize. There are more solutions out there for government to use to provide the services that we need to provide to the people of North Carolina. And so we think this trend is going to go in a similar direction as it's going now. For the last 2 years, what we're seeing is about a 33% increase in the number of IT procurement. So we've got to get better because there are more IT procurements coming through the door. Next slide. And so this is our internal dashboard that our procurement guidance team looks at on a daily basis. And this is an example of one of our agencies. And you'll see dates on here. Some of these dates are automatically generated based on past performance of procurement, so of the type of procurement. But there's also an opportunity for an agency, as I said, in phase 2, to sit down with us and come up with target dates that reflect better their need for that particular procurement. And so we'll enhance the schedule and we'll agree upon dates. And this is how we make sure that we're monitoring and hitting the dates that an agency wants us to hit to get the thing that they need to do what they need to accomplish their mission. So it's a great tool, and it helps us internally to manage. And there is a publicly available one on our website too. And I think there's a new publicly available one that will look more like this one coming soon. Next slide. And this is just a cool dashboard, but it told me something. It told me that there's some waste in our system. And so as we have more data, we try to make sure that, that data is driving our decision making. And so what we see here is that we've got a lot of canceled IT procurements. And, if something's canceled, especially in step 4, 5, and beyond, I mean, that's waste in the system. That means that we've got people in our organization that are taking the time to do reviews or help an agency write a solicitation document. But then that solicitation gets canceled. And so we're trying to figure out, we're asking agencies now why and capturing data on why is that procurement being canceled, so that we can try to understand early in the process what we need to do to make sure that things stay on track and that the agency continues to move towards what they need to do to get that procurement done. Next slide. And so, as I said, we've got our dashboards, we've got a guidance team that's helping agencies through the process and even answering some questions for agencies. But one really big deal to us anyway, I mean, how could I have a presentation without saying the word automation? So we're using automation, y'all. We're automating some manual tasks, some repetitive tasks that our team is doing on a day-to-day basis, really just to create that efficiency. So we're not unlike any other organization, company, government entity out there and thinking about, now that automation is, the buzz. I mean, we've been doing automation for a long time, but we're really taking a look at some of the new opportunities to make ourselves better. And so we have a chat bot that agencies can use 24/7 to ask questions about IT procurement. And we've automated 3 business processes that makes us faster. Next slide. We're also doing outreach. I mean, events like this one with the NC Tech Association. Next week, we've got a Hub IT Vendor Day at NC State on the May 2nd. So I think we've got about 60 vendors that are signed up for that. We're doing boot camps to train agencies. I think I mentioned that the last time I was here was that, agencies just said to me, hey, just tell us what to do and we'll do it. And so we stood up, or we reestablished our training team. I guess pre-COVID, we had training, but post-COVID, we weren't doing a whole lot of training. And so definitely there was a need to reestablish that training. And all of this contributes to a culture of continuous improvement. That's what we're committed to, is a culture of continuous improvement. We may never reach the destination, right? I mean, that's because as technology evolves, as the state's needs evolve, we'll continue to evolve and use the data that we have to make ourselves better. Next slide. And so looking ahead, we're going to do more automation, right? Well, we've got 9 workflow processes that we have in our sites right now and focus right now for automation. That's going to give us a lot better data. So we're looking forward to that. And, that'll allow our staff to focus on other things. I think the report that I got last week from the team was, I think we're with our current phase 1 automation, we're going to see a savings of about 700 hours in a year. I mean, that's significant savings, and we look forward to moving that time somewhere else where we need it, a place where we can be more strategic and help our industry or agency partners get what they need. And, of course, we're not going to slow down the process looking ahead. And, we're going to be increasing our team. As you saw in the slide before, several slides before, IT procurements are on the increase. That trend is increasing for us. And so what we know is that we've got to ramp up the number of people that we need in this organization to do some of these reviews. And when we have subject matter experts to do these reviews, AI can't do it for us. AI can help, but it can't do it for us. So next slide, I think, is James. So come on up, James.
Thank you. And I have some follow-up points before I talk about how to do business with the state of North Carolina. That the cycle time slide that you saw, so that includes legal. If we took legal out of there, I think it would be 1 to 2 days. So when I first started, I would get numerous calls. I remember the first fall, almost every day, Tori would call me. Hey, what about this procurement? It's stuck somewhere. And I would research it. I would find that it was in our security office or our EA office, and they were waiting for some paperwork from the agency. I call the agency and find they're waiting for some documents from the vendor, and 6 months had gone by, and the procurement had just been sitting there, and nobody cared about it until they actually need it, and then we had to do all the rest of the steps in a week, or pull a miracle to get it off. And so we set up those steps so we can do things in an orderly process. So now we kind of know when they're getting stuck. We're not always perfect. Does anybody here go boating? Raise your hand. Has anybody boated? And how good are you at backing up the boat? I kind of feel like procurements are like going to a boat ramp and then everybody's backing up the boat. And my father-in-law, he's a big fisherman. He's the greatest boat backer up in the world. And he just loves to sit there and watch people all day. I mean, they'll get in arguments. They'll put their car in the water. That's where we were kind of maybe a year and a half ago with procurements. we didn't back up the boat very well. And we still have some that get off track. But we have a lot more people that know how to back up the boat so that we can get them through the system. So we're working on that. Those internal dashboards help. When we say we're going to get better data, it's because right now the data for each step relies on the end user to manually put the data in. We're using automation to make that automatic. Once it becomes automatic, we'll have so much visibility into each procurement that we'll know when it's sitting in a queue too long. So then we're going to use additional automations with the dashboard Tori showed, and it'll start sending emails out to the level that, so then we know, okay, this one is off track. It was supposed to be done 3 days ago, 4 days ago. And the whole thing we want to say is, tell us, for agencies, tell us when you need the procurement within reason, and we'll work with you to get it done on time. So that's where we are as far as those automations. Those 9 workplace accelerators, they're really all designed to make sure when the procurement has to move from step to step. Because right now it doesn't give us as much accurate visibility in each step. Because we don't have people that back up the boats real well. That's the main reason, right? So these are automatic boat backup uppers. And then we create this PGT team. So we created the PGT team. I told them, your job today isn't going to be the same job in 6 months. So today they're doing all the manual things that we're automating. So as we automate that stuff, they're becoming more and more trainers. So if anybody in the state now has a procurement that gets stuck, and they're almost overwhelmed because everybody's wanting to learn how to back up boats. And so they're teaching everybody how to do it. So we have 3 people in the office. You can call, people working at the state can call and find out where it is, what they need to back it up, and get it through our process. And so it's a lot of training that's one-on-one, hands-on. A lot of people are very intimidated by the IT procurement process. And then kind of when they go through that experience, they're like, okay, I kind of get it now. It's too bad. It's not too bad. The procurement boot camp. So right now, as we're going through these automations, when we come out of it on the other side, we're almost going to be in a new world of procurement. So we just attended the PEAK conference, which was a statewide, it had a lot of non-IT procurement, but we also had tracks for IT procurement. When we come out of this next set of automations, we're going to have a boot camp to teach anybody in the state agencies can come, and we're going to walk them through each step so they know, okay, if I get this email message, this is what I need to do. If this says it's stuck here, this is what I need to do. I think it's going to really change the data. So hopefully we'll have even better results down the road. And the cool thing about the data is we'll be able to report it by agency. So if somebody says, oh, procurement's not working, we'll be able to say, well, agency ABC, agency XYZ is doing it 3 times better than you. It's working for them. So how can we make it work for you? So we're looking forward to having that as well. As far as we're onboarding 10 people right now to help with our end of year procurements, and we'll have them on until next December, at least 6 of them. And then we're going to right size our office so we have the right number of people. We want to be less bureaucratic and more strategic. And I think that's part of Secretary Weaver's strategic plan for our whole agency. We don't want to just be the department of no or processing things. We're automating the processing of things. We want to be smart in how we can work with the vendor community, with the agencies, and provide better results for the citizens of North Carolina. So that brings me to how to do business with the state of North Carolina. The first thing is register in the EVP portal. It's kind of a brand new portal. I think it works very well for vendors. There have been some issues with, as we started, but if you're not familiar with it, it's easy, evp.nc.gov. And then that's going to allow you to receive all the upcoming information on state term contracts and any contracts in the state of North Carolina. Most smaller governments also advertise their bids in there. So it gives you an opportunity to see those. And then if you are an HUB business, historically underutilized business, very much encourage you to register. That'll give you opportunities that you'll be more aware of. And we're even, as Tori mentioned, we're gonna do a workshop to help hub vendors to have more opportunity for IT procurements. Oh, go ahead next, sorry. So, one of the things we did, we promoted 3 people in our office. So Debbie Patterson, some of you might have worked with Debbie before. She's really good. She's now in a new position. She's our Director of Strategic Procurement. So I did, we did that with her. We also promoted 2 other people from that office to other positions, leadership positions within DIT. So one is handling agencies, team 1, and the other one is handling DIT procurement itself. The thing that did for Debbie is it left her with nobody in her department. So she's been working, that's one of the reasons we're onboarding so many employees. So she's been, her and one other person have been trying to meet the needs, but we'll have that fixed in the next few weeks. So, right now we're not performing as well as we might like, but if, when you have that kind of situation, we just got to get through it. But once they have all the staff in place, Debbie has some great ideas on more state term contracts, on how we can improve state term contracts, how we can refresh state term contracts more often. And one of the things we are working on now, that we were hoping to have it out already, but it's a very complicated bid. It's a security bid, and it'll have a number of categories. We're working to make the categories a little bit more specific now, but that will be coming out, hopefully, I think it's about a month from now. So make sure you're registered in EVP if you're a security firm so that you can be part of that bid. And once it does get out there, I can't really talk about it much then. Staffing contract 920 IT, that's the staffing contract. We are working to get that one refreshed. We're discussing our options. And so we'll look to have an update on that one soon. And then I thought 920S would be pretty good, but what we're going to look at here carries over to all the contracts in the state. So if we can go to the next slide. So on 920S, we had a lot of non-responsive offers. And it really makes me sad when somebody puts a lot of effort and work into a bid and we can't even look at it. And so I thought it would be helpful to share with you kind of some of the reasons the bids get, non-responsive. So one of the things it says in 2 or 3 places in our RFP that, and this is directly out of the RFP, vendor offers will be deemed non-responsive. They'll be rejected if they have any of these statements. And you don't know how many times we get a bid and we say, this is not a binding offer. We can't make a binding offer until you give us the business. Well, we can't. We're not allowed to by statute. So, and sometimes we've had people call us and they're like, oh, we knew that was in there. We forgot. It was in our template and we never pulled it out of our template. And they gave us this great bid. We wanted to award to them, but we can't because once you're non-responsive, we can't do anything else. Technically, and I'm not an attorney, but an attorney told me that it's not an offer if you're telling us if you have this language in there, right? So we can't award off of it. Go ahead to the next one. So in all of our bids, so if you've never done a state term contract before or with the state of North Carolina, and it's probably the same for any agency, university, are very similar, but there will be sort of an offer submission or something in the RFP. I mean, the RFP could be 100 pages long, but find the place where it says offer submission, because it'll tell you what you need in that bid in order to be responsive. So this is just an example, like the execution page, the addenda. This is a shorter list. It was longer than this, and it's usually straight down. But, this is just some of the things. So if you submit a bid, but you don't include architectural diagrams, then it's non-responsive if we're asking for architectural diagrams. Our timeline, you would not believe how many times we get incomplete bids. And because it's incomplete, it's not fair to other vendors who gave us the complete bid because we have to find it non-responsive. So we can go to the next one. And feel free to ask any questions too, if you have along the way. So this is another one. There's also the section for instructions for offer submission. And I just gave some ideas, but you put the bids in the exact order that it is in that section. Sometimes I see bids and I think people, like, somebody wants to do a bid and they'll just send us all their sort of education or marketing materials. Usually that's not going to work for most bids. So it's good to read the section that says, in the state, it's going to say instructions for offer submission. So that's your instruction page. And it seems simple, but half our bids, I don't think anybody looks at that and reads it because they're not going through. Now here I listed 4 things. There's about 12 things in there. And very often, as I said, things will be missing. And then go ahead and go to the next one. So this is some of the non-responsive bids we've had recently. So the majority of bid documents weren't executed, so nobody reviewed that to see if they were signed. And that they would not provide staff information until the statement of work starts. And when we clearly ask for staff information, if it contains language, this offer will be valid only if this offer is selected or a finalist or in the competitive range. And then multiple bid documents weren't provided. Now, let me tell you, when I looked at this bid, there was probably 35 of these explanations for bids that, these were just typical reasons they did not make it through our system. So we had to find them non-responsive. So go ahead to the next one. And you guys have the slides, so this can help you. But also when you look at the RFP, it's in there for you. So with that said, are there any questions for us?
We didn't go around into introductions. It's a big room. We got a lot of virtual attendees as well. But if you do have a question or observation, if you identify yourself and who you're with before you do, that'd be great. Doug?
Hey, James, Doug Miskey with the Public Sector Group. At what point in a process, I think it's at the end of when you actually make the award, that a vendor is notified that their bid is non-responsive, or does it happen prior to that? I've been involved with some of these where you submit a bid, it might take a year for the award to come out, and you may have been deemed non-responsive at the very beginning, but you don't know that for a year.
Yeah, that's a great question. We don't, for competitive reasons, we don't say who's non-responsive at the beginning. As our standard practice has been, and we want to change this, all we're obligated to do is put it out there who the winners are, and then you have to assume that, okay, I didn't win. I feel like we can do better. We can give you an opportunity possibly for a post-bid meeting. We don't have a big enough team to be like I would really want to be after that, but I think it's helpful to have some items like that, even, hey, this is why we didn't select you, or you were non-responsive and this is the reason why. So we have a little bit of culture change to do in our organization, but it's really at the end. The way it goes right now is the bid goes out there. PNC does it the same way. They announce who's won the bid, but there's nothing to say. They might put a score sheet out there if it's not an RFP, but I think there's a better way we can do it. Even if we at least just say, hey, thank you for bidding. We appreciated it. We did not award to you. We're trying to change that. And that's one of the things I talked about with Debbie. So once she gets in there, I think we'll be able to start doing some things like that.
I just add, like your idea of the internal chatbot for agencies, maybe there's a thought on an external one for vendors for those kinds of common things that they could help them do a better job of being responses.
It's a great, so one of the things I was telling somebody before the meeting, I feel like you could almost have it like down the road, I'd like to have a chat bot so that you could put your bid in and or not a chat bot, but use AI. You could submit your bid and it might kick it back out and say, if you submit this bid, it's going to be non-responsive because you didn't sign half the pages or
We're not there yet, Doug.
But it is, we do have 31 AI use cases, and that's one of the use cases.
Your earlier question,
let us know. Because, I mean, the concern I can think of just off the top of my head is that someone will want to protest, why is my, but there's no award yet to protest, so. I don't know what the positive effect might be along those lines, so. But if there's no valid legal reason for not informing somebody, we'll take a serious look at that. I think your point's spot on. I would rather know that I didn't make the cut versus waiting a year to find out I didn't make the cut.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Okay, and hopefully we're not taking a year, we're getting better.
Others?
I was gonna say, James or Tori, how does one, if you're a vendor or you're interested in participating on May 2nd, how does one register or how does one?
We send out emails, so if you send an email to me, I'll make sure it gets forwarded to our team. So james.tanzosh@nc.gov. Because I can't remember,
Yeah, so we work with the hub office that resides at Department of Administration. We don't have a hub office, that's the state's hub office. So they helped us to send out messages to potential participants at the hub event next week. It's May 2nd.
May 2nd.
Right.
and specifically for IT. Yes. Hub certified if there's room and they're not, I mean, we sent messages to all the hub certified vendors. We're about 20, we have about 20 seats left. So if they're not, I'm sure the hub office would love for them to come and then register to be hub vendors. You guys are letting us off easy.
We had a couple that came in through the viewers.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'll see if they're
Now
any
that the phone states.
anonymous. It's sort of along the lines, so I'm gonna go back to the earlier question from Doug a little bit here. If the current state is you found out that you weren't awarded the bid at the time that the announcement of the award is made, but you're not, and I do understand you're not told why, you aren't told that you were non-responsive?
So the standard practice, current practice and standard practice in North Carolina is you can give the opportunity for debriefings. It might be hard to do a debriefing on some of our contracts because we get 300 or 400 vendors that apply to them. And so that it would take but there's probably something we can do that's in between not even letting you know and giving you feedback. So one of the things we usually have a committee and the committee is going to say, this is the positives, this is the negatives, and this is why we didn't select this vendor. That possibly could be something that at some point we can make available, for vendors. That could be helpful.
The question that was submitted was asking about, once an award has been made, how and when or if is the winning bidder's bid made public to the people to be able to view what a winner's bid looks like?
So we don't necessarily make the awards public. If they're state contracts, we put them on our webpage.
Sure.
So you can see who was awarded and some things on there. If you wanted to see the winning bid, you would just file a open records request for that bid and just say, I'd like to see the winning bid for XYZ state term contract. And that would be the mechanism to get that.
State term contract or any other type of contract.
Any other type of contract,
Yeah.
generally, if it's like a agency contract, you have to go to the agency to get that info. Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, just one more thing, I'll shut up, but yeah, I think you can cut down on award on protests. You have a 2-week window to protest and you don't necessarily have all that information, like the ability to evaluate the award justification, the scoring. So it forces vendors to protest the bid when really what they're just looking for is information that they have to do a freedom of information.
Mr. Watt.
Records request to get the data. Maybe a way if you release that at award time when people can get access to it, it might cut down. Like people might go, look, I lost because I was too much or something.
I think that, to be honest, there was so much that we needed to do for the process and to improve all that. Now we're just starting to say, you know, we need to reach out to the supplier community more and work with them more. So that's gonna kind of be, as we get this piece kind of fixed, we're gonna want to do things like that. Even before that, do some surveys. Hey, what are we doing good? What aren't we doing good? What can we fix? So I appreciate that feedback. It's just, we've been focusing on one thing, and I'm kind of like, yeah, we really need to now start fixing other problems or issues.
Great feedback, though.
The areas that we were able to improve upon are areas to the point we had direct influence over. Now we need to start getting to, I don't know, call it harder stuff. We need to, that was the low hanging fruit, now we need to get to the higher hanging. So your comments are exactly the kind of feedback we be able to go back and say, what can we do? What are we legally required to do? What can we legally do? And then we have to also make sure that there's no confidential or sensitive information. And that wouldn't, so we have to go through a redaction or I don't know if we can turn it around within two, I just don't know, but we'll take that feedback. We get where you're trying to come from and appreciate the question.
And one of the things that some of the feedback we got was our financial process, especially for state term contracts. So we took the feedback directly from here, and we on the last 920S, we had the new process, and we didn't have to exclude anybody for not complying with the financial portion of the 920S contract. And I think the previous one, there was probably 20 vendors that were like, we're not giving you these records. And we realized, okay, we can ask for what we need in a different way. That was a lot more user friendly, I think, but still protected the state's interest.
Randy Farragut, local. So on the IT procurement dashboard that we talked about, are the phases of where the procurement's at in the phases allowed to be public, I wonder?
We're talking about that. You know, what can we show out there? It's possible. I mean, the one thing we want to get is when we put solicitations out there, they said expected award date June 25th, right? And then October comes around and you're like, oh, they're probably close. And like that's procurement nationwide. It's probably like that, right? We want to be so that if it says June 25th, there's a good chance it's going to be close to that date, if not on that date. So success for us is going to be we hit that date.
And a more specific answer is that no, not all phases can be put out there
Yeah.
publicly, because statute says that it's to be a confidential process. And so one of our phases is negotiating with vendor, right? And so if we put that out there on the public dashboard or website, and it says negotiating with vendor, and you're not being negotiated with, guess what?
You kind of know. So we might be able to like share that though, and then yeah, go ahead.
So the current public dashboard, it merges like 3 steps at the end, right? And so the next step, you won't see it happen until contract awarded, right? So we do have to be cognizant of that confidentiality that's required, and make sure that we're not prematurely exposing information that hits the hand.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
Please join me in thanking our friends from IT. Now we'll hear from Ed Turlington and Drew Moretz and their famous goldenrod paper. I'll help you pass that on. Actually, those are for the middle.
Thank you, Brooks, and thanks to our DIT. As Mr. Secretary, this is more than once you and your senior team have come and met with vendors and all of us who work in this space. Appreciate it. And we also appreciate your national leadership as president of NASCIO, which all of you know is all the people like Secretary Weaver who hold that position. The other thank you I'd like to give before Drew and I give a brief report is to thank not only all of you here who represent your companies before state government, and I see friends like Natalie, who's the immediate past chair of the board of NC Tech, but I look across the room and I see colleagues like Bo and Bradford and Trafton and Doug and Zach, Tony, Katie, who represent the industry before the legislature. So thank you for doing that good work, and also thank you for carrying the banner for the industry. So we're going to do two things briefly. Page 1, the front of the document summarizes some of the election results. As you know, we're meeting since the March primary, and then we're going to talk briefly about the legislative session. So Drew, if you would hit some highlights on what you think might be notable on the elections that are listed here on our slide.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. Appreciate it. Again, we've got, as Ed pointed out, there's a major election coming up in November. We have 10 statewide races. You see the list there. Auditor is double starred because Jessica Holmes was appointed recently, and she's listed as an incumbent because she's currently serving in that position. There are a number of open seats, governor on down. DPI is starred because the Superintendent Truitt lost in a primary, so that's going to be an open race there. Currently, U.S. House, we have 14 seats in our congressional delegation. That was up one based on the 2020 census. We have 9 incumbents who are running for re-election, and currently we have a split of 7-7. The maps have been redrawn by the legislature, and so we expect significant changes. Along with the 5 people who have retired or moved on to other seats. We're looking at a 10-4 Republican-Democrat split, potentially 11-3, depending upon one very highly contested race in Eastern North Carolina. Legislature currently is, they have just the right number for supermajorities in both chambers. Interesting to note that while the House currently has it, they didn't have it after the last election. They added one due to a party change. And so the big question as we head into the elections is, and you come back into 2025, is will the supermajorities remain? That is one of the big issues and questions outstanding. And again, that will sort of have a say over how important the governor's position is going into the next election cycle.
Good. Mr. Secretary, I forgot to thank you on appointing Dylan Frick as the new lobbyist for the Department of Information Technology. Many of you know Dylan from his past lobbying work, and we appreciate your doing that. One statistic that Drew and I have talked about that you may all know if you've been in North Carolina a while, but in recent history, our statewide races have been close. In 2020, 3 of the statewide races were decided by less than 1.6%, and that doesn't count the presidential race, which you may remember President Trump carried our state by 1.3%, and then another 2 were decided by less than 2.7%. So we are the proverbial purple state. Now, some of you being younger than me may remember that where blue and red and purple came from. As I recall, it was NBC, maybe in the 2000 cycle on its chart, had Democratic states blue, Republican states red. I don't remember them having purple states, but we're considered a purple state because we can go either way. So let's go. Alex, do you advance the slide or do I? Okay, thank you. So tomorrow, the General Assembly session starts. All of you have been around a while know that this is often called the short session because legislators usually don't stay in session as long, although we all know there have been times they do. Primary business to adjust the second year of the budget. And Ms. Secretary, you may know this. We've been told by Kristen Walker and others the governor's probably going to release his budget recommendations, maybe even tomorrow. So Drew, can you talk a little about the legislative session?
Sure. As we head into the session tomorrow, there's a number of issues to keep an eye on. As Ed said, they adjust the second year of the 2-year budget, which was passed last year in the long session. Last week, there was an updated revenue forecast, which included more money than they previously estimated. 400 million will be additional 400 million will be coming in by the end of this current fiscal year, which ends June 30th, and they'll have another $1 billion to work with for the upcoming fiscal year. A couple of key items that are outstanding as far as what they're going to do with the revenues. We know that there are some opportunity scholarships or school vouchers, school choice vouchers that is coming in over budget. We'll need some additional money. Medicaid expansion is something that has also increased some numbers. There's a huge $100 million ask roughly from the community colleges, $93 million there. Most of that is recurring, and that's an important term. And then the question is, what are they going to do with IT funding and additional broadband spending? That's something that the legislature has really taken to heart and trying to use the federal funds as those are drying up. Do they continue that investment to reach more places across the state within broadband?
On that point, down under letter C, Secretary Weaver and his team presented at the legislature last week on 3 topics. Deputy Secretary Denny gave a detailed explanation of the broadband issue. Thank you for sharing that information so voluminously, Mr. Secretary. There is the link there to the website if you haven't seen that. Tory led a discussion on procurement, and then the Secretary especially talked about staffing. They forgot you for a moment, but they were, I'm glad they brought you back to talk about that. And the reason we put broadband spending provisions, one of the things Deputy Secretary Denny talked about was some changes in state law to, as I understand it, Mr. Secretary, facilitate even more effective spending of the money. Drew, if you would talk about some other things that may come up.
While the news is good short-term on the budget, longer term, with some of the decisions that have been made previously, tax cuts that are going to be implemented going forward, there's going to be a loss of revenue, or sorry, the revenue is going to slow while expenditures continue to go up at a faster pace than the revenues go up. And so what you'll likely hear is some conversations this year about how to plug that gap, which really will start to see itself in the second year of the next biennium in the 26-27 budget. And so as those tax cuts go into effect, so you'll hear some conversations about video lottery terminals we expect this year, which is a sweepstakes machines. It's a huge moneymaker for the state if they're currently illegal. However, if you legalize them and regulate them heavily, will reduce the number of machines that are out on the street, but you'll also be able to collect some revenue from that. There'll be some additional conversations likely. Medical marijuana, Senator Rabin has been very staunchly supportive of that. And he, as the rules chair of the Senate, we like to joke that the Senate rules chair may start holding up House bills if the House doesn't decide to hold a vote this year. So there's a power play being the rules chair, and we very well may see that come to pass this year.
And then a couple other things, and all of you, especially our colleagues who do lobbying at the General Assembly, there is an omnibus alcoholic beverage control law bill that's pending that has a lot of things in there. And then all of you may remember the legislature, at least one house last year, passed a bill related to TikTok. Of course, in the last 24 hours, we've seen a lot of action on the federal level. I just wanted to flag for people that that is out there and is eligible. Our contact information is at the bottom of the sheet. The document will be sent out afterwards to those of you who are online. So Brooks, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Phone, or friends online. If you have any questions, we'll take them. Each year, I think most of you will recall that we do a tech day at the legislature. This is essentially where usually the chairman of the House IT Appropriations Committee and sometimes the sort of corresponding committee in the Senate will hold a special committee meeting dedicated to hearing a briefing on the state of the tech sector in North Carolina, where I'll do a kind of a summary of our annual report on how North Carolina stacks up among the states in a variety of key ways. Often the secretary or one of his colleagues is with us on that day to give a brief update on what DIT is doing and focused on. We don't have a date set yet, but I'm just going to encourage you to keep it on your radar because we're looking at some dates in May. You're out the first 2 weeks of June, is that right? Yeah. So we're looking at dates in May as our priority. So once the Chairman Johnson kind of selects a date that works all the way around, we will announce that. This is a public meeting. It's just an opportunity for us to really highlight the sector. It's held at the LOB and open to our members to attend, of course, because it's a public meeting, but we'll let you know about it and encourage a good turnout for that. So keep an eye out for a Tuesday or Wednesday sometime in mid to late May. With that, I will wish you a safe travel home. We're going to put an email out by tomorrow that'll have all the attachments, James's email address, and links to some of the things I've referenced in my earlier announcements of upcoming activities that you might have interest in. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you to Palo Alto Networks for supporting today's session. and we'll see you all next time.